Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to our meeting this evening, and we're going to call our meeting to order. Have a roll call by our City Clerk, Kathy Valdez.
The record shall reflect that all members are present.
The next thing, if you all rise, we're going to have a Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Green.
All right, please stand. Hoods and hats removed. Put your hand to your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In accordance with the Brown Act, I'd like to announce that as a result of convening simultaneous meetings, the members of the Buena Sanitation District will receive compensation of $147.75 for the district meeting pursuant to Buena Sanitation District Ordinance 2006-1. I'd like to remind everyone that the Vista Municipal Code requires members of the public to observe order and decorum at the meeting and to conduct themselves in a courteous manner. The ordinance was adopted to allow for the public input and to facilitate city business without disruption of the meeting. Applause is appropriate for the items listed under the presentation portion of the agenda only, and attendees should remain seated during the meeting. Persons needing to stand are requested to step outside the City Council chambers where video and audio of the meeting are playing, and this is also listed on the agenda cover sheet. I don't see too many students here tonight, but any student wishing to receive credit for attending this evening's meeting must stay for a minimum of 1 hour. However, we ask that you stay for the completion of an item rather than leaving in the middle of a discussion. When you're ready to leave, you can ask one of the sheriff deputies or a staff member in the back of the room to sign your paper. To speak on an item on the agenda, please fill out a speaker slip with the number of the item you want to speak on and give it to the City Clerk Secretary. Speaker slips are available just outside the council chambers. And with that, we will go to the approval of our agenda by our City Manager, Patrick Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no changes this evening.
We have one presentation this evening, which is our Fire Chief, Ned Vanderpool, will provide the Vista Fire Department update. Welcome, Ned. Thank you.
So, this photo here, you have the professional men and women of the Vista Fire Department. Each one of those individuals together create the high-quality, professional, customer service-oriented Vista Fire Department. And I would like to begin with a couple success stories of what's been going on in the Vista Fire Department over the past year. We often get a lot of positive feedback from the public. Notes in the mail. We just recently received a really nice painting from the Kincaid Fire area. Emails, customer service reviews, many treats delivered to the fire station, which we always appreciate. But we also look at metrics and we look at data that we generate. And some of the data that we measure is the turnout time. That's a very important one for us. So that's a measurement of the time the dispatch is sent to the responding unit to the time that they are en route to the incident. And I'm happy to report that over the last year we've been able to meet our goal of 90% of the time we are within 2 minutes going to those calls. So that's a great standard that we've set, and we'll talk more about some of these standards later on. I'm happy to report that. That's definitely a step in the right direction as we start getting the resources to the incident that we need. Another one that we've talked about in the past in terms of the offload delay, we've had that discussion before with the hospitals. One of the measurements there that we use is the turnover of care. So it's the time when the patient arrives at the hospital to the time that the paramedic turns over the patient to the hospital staff. And in the past, we talked about the offload delays and how long that time period lasted at the hospital. So I'm happy to report there that because of that turnout, because of the transfer of care reporting, we've been able to lower that time a lot. And that was in part due to a lot of the members here in this room, some of the elected officials, as well as city staff who met with Tri-City Hospital because of those relationships that we have, and we were able to make some positive improvement in that area. So these are two examples of the metrics we use to ensure the accountability to standards and meeting our goals. And for us, these actions definitely result in lives saved and property saved as well. So a couple of cardiac success stories. We have two recently where, due to this quick turnout time, staff getting on scene really quickly, providing a quick assessment, a rapid assessment, and getting treatments in place right away. We had two recent examples where people that called in with a complaint of chest pain, they had their treatment quickly provided at Tri-City Hospital and were able to walk out days after the event. So that's a very positive story there. Inspectors are out there on a regular basis looking for life hazard and fire hazard issues out there, blocked exits, electrical issues that might cause a fire down the road. We just received a federal grant. Some of the administrative staff has been working on getting a federal grant, so we received a federal grant for skin cancer screening. And as you know, skin cancer and cancers in general are a big issue in the fire service. So all of this happened just recently, and then throughout the whole past year, 14,200 calls is what we responded to in the Vista Fire Department. So one of the ways that we look towards the future is through our strategic plan. And so up on the screen, there's a copy of the cover page of the 2020 to 2025 strategic plan. So it's final draft format, and we should be having that completed by February. It's a community-driven strategic plan, which means we had members of the community come in to give us feedback on what they saw as the strengths and weaknesses and the priorities for the Vista Fire Department. Once that portion was complete, we had 25 members of the Vista Fire Department. For 3 days, we worked on developing the strategic plan, and we came up with 7 strategic goals that over the next 5 years we'll be working on those. One of our captains, Captain Boats, will be leading the strategic plan oversight, so he'll be the one that's making sure that we're getting the task completed as we work towards achieving those goals. The 7 objectives that we have are fire prevention, physical resources, wellness, training proficiency, succession planning, service delivery, and communication. And once that plan is finalized, that will be a public document for review. The standards of cover is another document that's in process right now as well, and this is our third 5-year standards of cover. The standard of cover is looking at the fixed and mobile resources for fire, emergency medical, hazardous material, and technical rescue responses. We use this document to assess the community risks. That's the first part of it. And then we use that to define our baseline emergency response performance standards, determine apparatus staffing and apparatus patterns, evaluate workload and ideal unit utilization, measure the service delivery, and then work that into our strategic plan as well. The 3 components are the distribution, the concentration, and the reliability. The distribution, we're really looking at that first unit getting on scene and affecting a positive change to whatever the incident is. So if it's a fire, getting water on the fire. If it's a medical issue, getting medical treatment in place. The concentration is the balance of that response, so the effective response force. On a structure fire, that's 15 personnel, so that we measure the amount of time it takes to get 15 personnel on scene of that incident to control it. The third piece of that is the reliability, so looking at the availability of the resources to respond to calls. Again, this document, once it's finalized, will be presented to the council for adoption. This all goes into the accreditation. So the accreditation is a comprehensive self-assessment. And what we're doing there is we're examining past, current, and future fire service deliveries and other internal performance measures, and then comparing those to industry standards. So our goal is to maintain and improve the service delivery. The first thing we do is with that standards of cover and looking at our community risk assessment to see what that looks like. And then we ask a number of questions along the way. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How well are we doing it? And how can we do it better? So what accreditation really champions is a continuous improvement model. So we're forcing the application of new and innovative ideas as well as new industry best practices. So you can be assured that your fire department is current, measured, verified, and validated as meeting current standards and best practices. So this whole process allows decisions to be made based on fact and not on emotions or feelings. The final slide here is the developments for 2020. So we have a lot going on right now, as you can tell, and then a lot happening in the rest of the year. So we have a hiring process right now to hire 5 vacancies, to fill 5 vacancies. So those individuals will start on February 24. The enhanced inspection program will include engine companies going out, focus on apartment inspections primarily, so looking at the high life loss potential in apartments and mitigating any issues there. In the Emergency Operations Center, we're really focusing attention again on the Emergency Operations Center and the ability to respond in a disaster situation. 2 of the big pieces there are training, making sure that city staff, everybody's ready to go in that, and also improving the functionality of the Emergency Operations Center itself. On the new equipment side, we have 2 new engines coming this year, a new brush rig, and then we're rechassing 2 ambulances. We also have a new ladder truck, and all these purchases are being used, are using capital replacement funds that we have budgeted. The dispatch updates and dispatch, there's a lot of new technology that's coming along. We have new reporting software, as well as a tiered dispatch system that we're going to be introducing to make sure that we're sending the appropriate resource to the incident. And finally, in that area, exciting from last year even, is that we have North Zone medical directors. So now that we have medical directors involved in the North Zone, we're able to try out some different innovative ideas when it comes to our service delivery. Finally, in this area, just happened recently, the state budget approved 500 new firefighters that will be introduced to CAL FIRE over the next 5 years. So that's definitely a benefit to not just residents of Vista, but the residents statewide. So over the next 5 years, we'll be working through each component of our strategic plan, seeking opportunities to improve our service delivery and increasing the safety of the community, as well as anticipating and addressing the challenges in front of us. Thank you for your time, and I'm open to any questions.
Do I have any questions from the council? Councilmember Contreras.
Thank you, Chief Vanderpool, for an update on what's going on. I have a question regarding the enhanced inspection program. I know that this is a newer state mandate. We're not necessarily receiving any funds to be able to more actively inspect our buildings here in Vista to make sure that they're safe. Can you explain a little bit about how we're going to be able to achieve specifically inspecting the apartments? Because I know that is probably the most difficult out of all the categories of different buildings that have to be inspected. So if you could just provide some information about that.
Sure. So this most significant change is going to be incorporating the engine companies. So the staff that are working out of the fire stations, basically, we'll be using them to go out and inspect the buildings. And we get the life safety inspection completed, as well as getting out the crews out there to do some training, to do some pre-planning. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And then that's our first step in it. Whenever we have light duty personnel, we're always rolling the light duty personnel into those inspections as well. So that will be a focus. So if there's somebody returning from an injury that's not quite ready to go back on the floor yet, and they spend some time in administration, that will be one of the tasks that they'll be working on.
And as far as being able to have enough personnel to complete the inspections, historically, the amount of individuals that we have that are on light duty, is that sufficient to be able to get to 100% of apartments and buildings inspected?
The light duty would not know because that fluctuates quite significantly. But using the engine companies, that's our first step in the process, and then we'll be reassessing as we go along.
Thank you so much.
Deputy Mayor Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief Vanderpool, for such an encompassing report for us. I appreciate it. Can you say one more time how many calls the department answered last year?
14,200.
I thought that's what you said. 14,200 calls for our city last year. That's amazing. And I hear from a lot of our constituents about your interaction, our first responders' interaction with the community. And I have never heard anything bad. I've never heard anything derogatory or a complaint. It's all good. And usually we don't hear from people when things are good. We usually hear from people when they want to complain about things not going well. So to have people actually contact us and say what a great job. Unfortunately, they had to have an interaction with the fire department, which usually is not a pleasant experience. But to take the time and energy to contact us and say, aside from it not being the best day of our lives or what was happening, your first responders, your fire department, your paramedics, and even I know sometimes the sheriff's department also attend some of these events, to say that they were treated with such grace and respect and so much help. Everybody was helpful in different ways that you don't normally think about paramedics doing for somebody. I just want to say thank you, because you are doing a great job for our community and you're doing it respectfully, and I appreciate that very, very much.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Green.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chief Ned Vanderpool, sir. Number one, impressive presentation. I don't know if anybody saw, but I didn't see a whole bunch of notes or anything. Like, the amount of fire knowledge coming out of your head, in my opinion, is extremely impressive. So that's good stuff, man. It sounded like you were reading it, but you weren't. It was coming out of your head. So anyway, that's pretty awesome. I also had some questions with the compliance aspect of, I don't know if it's SB or AB 1205 as far as the actual bill goes, but it sounds like what we're going to do is constantly be reassessing, that we have new inspections set up quarterly, and basically the first quarter when we have it done, we'll see how it goes, and if we need more people to help be in compliance at that point in time, we'll be addressing it. So I think it's a good plan. I like that you guys are working so hard. I love that we're getting new equipment and that our firefighters have everything they need to be successful. I'd like to kind of echo what Deputy Mayor Rigby said, is that every person in the community that I speak with that talks about our firefighter holds them in the highest regards. And as a kid who grew up in Vista, they're like my hometown heroes. You know, they've always not only been around fighting fires and saving lives, but they're really involved in the community as well. And I think that's a really big thing that makes it good when they do show up on those days that are the biggest tragedies in our life, that we remember they were there taking care of us, just having fun as well. And I think it's a good balance that your fire department has, and I really appreciate all you do within the community. So thank you so much, and keep it up in nice uniform. Like it.
Thank you, Chief. I think that's all of our questions. Thank you for your report. That was very, very interesting, and we look forward to getting your next report, which is on your strategy plan on the 7 things. So we'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next thing on our agenda is our consent calendar. Those are items C1 through C12. And so do I have some? I have C6 and C7 that are pulled by the public. Thank you. And so do I have any other ones pulled by our city? If not, I would, our council members, Deputy Mayor Rigby.
I would move that we approve the balance of the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and please cast your votes. Okay, the first thing we will do is we'll pull C6, the acceptance of the California Budget Act funding for homeless prevention and intervention services, and we will go with Joshua Tienda as our first speaker.
We had talked about this a long time, like spent 4 months or 5 months talking. I just wanted to know what did the council, what were final thoughts of the council, how they're going to use the funds.
You know what, we're going to have a report on that. That's coming up at the end of 28th, on the 28th, here at our council chambers, at our council meeting. We'll have a report on that, and then we'll make a decision at that time.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. The next one is, do we want to vote on that first? Okay, so I need a motion and a second on that.
I'll move that we approve C6 as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes on that item. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Then we go to item C7, which is exclusive negotiation agreement for the lease of the Avo Playhouse. And that was...
This one we have our Economic Development Director, Kevin Ham, who will give the agenda report.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. The Avo Playhouse, better known as the Avo, is located at 303 Main Street. This historic theater was built in 1948. And the city bought the theater in 1995 and restored it to accommodate live performances. For the past few years, the Avo has primarily served as a rental venue for traveling theater and musical groups. In 2019, the Avo was utilized on 155 days, and the remaining 200 days were unused. Over the last several years, parties interested in the AVO have approached the city. Ultimately, they declined to move forward due to a variety of reasons. At this time, JCG Development and their principal, Jay Wentz, has expressed interest in reinvigorating the AVO as a music and live entertainment venue. JCG is a partner in the new mixed-use project located at 100 Main called the Ryland, and they are pursuing additional partnerships within the community. The city understands the historical significance of the AVO and its architecture, and it was important to work with an organization that is mindful of these values. Jay Wentz has undertaken similar historically significant efforts with care, such as his work with the restoration and the ongoing operation of the Lafayette Hotel in San Diego. At least two council goals are potentially addressed with this proposal. They would be fiscal responsibility and economic development. While the facility is used in less than 50% of the year, this proposal could increase the usage and the fiscal return to the city. Just as important as the fiscal impact is the impact on surrounding businesses and property owners. To continue the vibrancy we have experienced in the downtown, this use could increase the foot traffic for the benefit of the retail and restaurant establishments. These downtown establishments are competing with many new amenities and uses in surrounding communities. And for our businesses to stay viable, this additional foot traffic could generate new customers and the foot traffic they need to stay profitable. It should be noted that the ENA is the very first step in the process, and we will evaluate whether or not this is a viable idea. The information derived from JCG's work at their sole cost will be shared with the city, and even if this effort does not move forward, it will be helpful for us to better understand the costs related to facility improvements and other potential future uses. Any final agreement will be publicly presented, discussed, and ultimately the council will have the final approval. Given JCG's interest in the restoration of the AVO, their demonstrated commitment to Vista, and their desire to invest the funds necessary to evaluate this proposal, staff recommends the city enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement with JCG Development. This will give the city and JCG up to 18 months to explore the feasibility of their proposal and discuss potential lease terms. There is no direct fiscal impact associated with this recommendation this evening, and this concludes my report. Mr. Wentz, Mr. Johnson, and I are available for questions.
I have three speakers here, so you want to hear the speakers first? Then we'll go. Okay, we'll start with Katie Melendez, followed by Natalie Vega, and followed by Joshua Tienda.
Hi, good evening, Council. I wanted to share that when I was 11 years old, I was actually my first play at the AVO. It was a production of James and the Giant Peach, and it was precious. And now I am grown up, having been born and raised here, and I would love to see this venue evolve into something that has more opportunity for artistic expression. But in order to move forward, the community, equity, and inclusivity have to be top priority in order to make sure this city-owned building is developed with the community in mind. I have a few suggestions. Before entering into an exclusive negotiation agreement with JCG Development, I suggest that two items be added to the agreement under developers' required actions. First, JCG must collaborate with a committee formed of Vista residents in fair representation from each district, meeting at frequent intervals for the full duration of the agreement. Second, JCG must conduct a social impact assessment of the project so that the well-being and integration of our community is maintained or improved by this project. Vista City Council needs to place greater responsibility and scrutiny on developers who come into our community and seek to profit from our space and our residents. And if JCG wants to demonstrate a commitment to Vista, I hope that they will be happy to take on additional requirements and service to the community. Frankly, the community is eager to replace city council members who do not demonstrate an investment in the creativity and potential of Vista residents. And in our community, there's a lot of people feeling like they are separate from the new changes that are happening downtown, and I really want to see more community integration in this project. Thank you.
Natalie Vega, and then followed by Joshua Tienda.
Hello. I actually threw a music event last summer in the Avo, right after Artist Alley Festival. I just have a few questions I wanted to just share with the council and just kind of have you guys simmer on it. Would the city be willing to invest in programming that provides more accessibility to the youth to use the Avo? And could a request for proposal go out for redevelopment of the Avo, and has one gone out already? Why exclusivity to just one developer and to explore possible uses? How much has the city invested in marketing the Avo to music and theater groups within the city? If this project does go forward, could the public request access to the space at a low barrier cost? And can the public request a panel, request a panel made of performers, promoters, and musicians be put together to collaborate with the developer about possible uses of the public-owned asset, especially in a design phase? It's an asset, and the city has not invested in the space at an appropriate level for years now, and they aim to privatize the redevelopment of a space that has mass potential to generate money for the city as well as surrounding businesses. How does the council and the city management better utilize their public arts commission? A group of members from the community engaged in the arts invest in programming to activate public spaces like the Avo. And what type of grants have been explored, and have any grants been investigated regarding programming this space?
Thank you. Joshua Tienda.
Hello, council members, and I have no quarrel with the development itself. I just wanted to wondered why, and was it a discussion item rather than a consent? I mean, we discussed the corner right there on Main and the gazebo, and I think the Alvo needed that discussion as well. But I can see the benefits too. We have a lot of breweries, and having a music venue would generate more interest. The traffic that is around there can go. The patrons there could go somewhere like late at night to listen to a live band. So I can see the benefits. I just want more community input on the item. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last speaker. So, Councilmember Franklin.
Well, I had the opportunity to go to the main stage in Ramona this last week, and I don't know if the concept is similar. It was a theater pretty similar to the Avo. It's kind of flattened out in the seating area, tables, kind of turned into a restaurant concept. And it's a pretty cool concept. I think it would really be a game changer for the Avo and for our downtown. I'm excited about it. Joshua, I think you asked a good question. we had a more robust discussion about the thing you brought up, because it was an investment of public funds. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've had a long list of folks that have approached us about development or investing in the AVO.
We've had a few folks have approached us, and when they've looked at it, they've declined to move forward.
So we've got a developer who we've actually invited to do things in the city that they weren't considering previously, because this developer's got such a great track record. We've kind of sought them out, and they're doing some great things we're really appreciative of, bringing some great investment to our downtown, and we really need it right now. We're losing a couple of things downtown. It's a process. We had some early investors. Some of the concepts, are tried. They're not all succeeding. So we need more. We need more people to try, because we're going to get there with the new housing we have coming online. That's market rate. We're going to have a lot of new consumers. They're going to demand opportunities like this for entertainment. And I think the idea of being able to go have a meal and have some live entertainment and have an adult beverage, it's a cool concept. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think this is a development partner who has demonstrated a commitment to our community, and what we're really doing with tonight's action is simply opening a negotiation. So we're not, we haven't even made an agreement, don't know what it's going to look like yet. This is just an agreement to begin the process. So with that, I would make a motion that we do approve this item.
Councilmember Green.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Hamm, for your presentation, and thank you, Mr. Wentz, for being in the audience here for any questions that we have. In 1989, I watched my first Ninja movie at the AVO. It was a functioning movie theater, and they did have popcorn and dirty floors, and it was awesome. And you could go across the way to Juanita's Taco Shop and play Ninja video games and eat amazing tacos. So I do love the AVO, and I'm excited about the AVO. One of my biggest concerns is kind of maintaining the historical integrity of the AVO. I know you can kind of change the inside of it and reconfigure and things, but I really like the feel of the actual AVO. I know we're not talking about design and things, and a lot's coming back, and that's a big thing for the community is, this is on the consent calendar right now, and I brought it forward to the community and had like 200 and some odd comments and a lot of people, and I presented them to staff, and we added it to packet, so everybody that spoke about it was heard. But this is really a conversation to say, hey, what can we do with this space to help bring life to our downtown, and what type of amazing performances, and why not have somebody who was willing to spend millions of dollars on a facility that we own? I'm sure they're going to go out and look for the best person to book the best bands and the best entertainment for our downtown, which is going to infuse all of these great restaurants that we have down there that people don't know a whole lot about, and our great boutiques down there like Twice on Main, which is great, and people visiting our little art culture area or little back fence area over there. And I really think that if we can come up with a good plan, and the terms of the lease are agreeable, and the redevelopment and the remodel is accepted by the community, and kind of the impact that it's going to have fiscally, I'm sure that's going to be something we'll all speak about as well, can be presented to the community, that this can be something that's universally accepted by our community. I mean, I would be stoked to have Snoop come perform downtown at the AVO. What? Sorry, I'm a Snoop fan. It is what it is. But I definitely do think that we have a lot of questions, and we do have questions that need to be answered, but knowing the amount of money that this company has already invested in our city, I feel like them having a vested interest in our community, who better than somebody who just spent $100 million to want to spend a few more million to bring some more people here. And I know that right now, that sounds like the best plan, in my opinion. So the other thing I want to make sure of is, I have a daughter who's involved in youth theater. This year she performed with Carlsbad Youth Theater, Moonlight Youth Theater, and Broadway Youth Theater. And she performs at the AVO, she performs at the Moonlight. And I know Randall Hickman and Michael Bradford and the people who are in charge of programming the Moonlight for the city of Vista, and they're all going to have their finger on the pulse of what happens here and the pulse of theater in the city of Vista for years to come. We love theater in the city of Vista, and we've invested hundreds of thousands, probably millions of dollars in our theater and our arts in the city of Vista. And this is going to be no different. It's something we're going to collaborate with community members about. It's something that I know Jay is welcoming community input on, and it's something that the council, we're going to take really seriously, because this is something that's been in our community for years, and I want it to be here for my kids when they come back, but maybe as an awesome venue to hang out on a Friday night with some friends. So I definitely am looking forward to what's going to transpire, but wanted to make sure the community knows by no means are we leveling the AVO and putting anything crazy in there. This is just a discussion we're opening to say, hey, how can we infuse the nightlife in our downtown? And that's something that we've wanted to do for years that we're doing a great job of. And I hope that our business owners realize that the business development aspect of our job as a council is something we take extremely seriously. And this is all of us collaborating to bring the absolute best product to our downtown that our entire community can benefit from. So with that, I do second the motion. I know there's more discussion to have on the item, but I definitely am okay with this. Well
said. Councilmember Contreras.
This is really exciting. Before I was on council, I would just look at the downtown and I would see the AVO and I'm like, man, this is an economic engine that is just idle right now. And part of a conversation that I've had ongoing in the community here, as soon as I came on board, I remember talking with you, Kevin, and with you, Patrick, and just like, hey, what can we do to get the AVO going? Because I think we're all aware of the hardships that our businesses downtown are going through. You just cannot sustain a business on 2 days of activity, Friday and Saturday. There's no way. And so, I really see this as an opportunity for the city to use someone else's money to come up with some really interesting forward-looking ideas of how we could better utilize the city-owned asset that's right now underperforming. But definitely the community is right to have concerns, right? They are right to have concerns about, hey, this is a city-owned facility. So, it's great that we have individual, company, a developer interested in this space. But what does that mean to the community, right, if we move forward with something like this? And I think that's a very important question to ask. And it's something that should definitely be reflected in any kind of movement forward. We absolutely have to have the community involved in this discussion in some way or form that's meaningful. One of the things looking at the development and lease concept, under A, we're looking at a term of options sufficient to enable developer to finance the project and recapture its investment. And we're looking at somewhere between 20 and 50 years. I'd rather have that a little bit closer to the 20-year mark than 50. And then when it comes to H, it says provisions relating to possible use of the AVO by the city on an occasional basis. I want us to infuse into the word occasional more of a spirit of the community having the ability to utilize this space a little bit more. So I just want to make sure that the public is aware at this point. What we want to do as a council is explore any kind of possibility to revitalize this asset and to really provide something here in the city of Vista where we have a median age of 33, provide something to the community that I think a lot of people would be excited during the week, on the weekend, to go downtown, watch a cool show, and then explore the fine dining and amazing microbrew life that you can also find downtown. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. I do have some questions, though, because as a city, we do have the ability to do this on our own. Whether or not the time frame for that would be something quick could probably be discussed for hours on end. And I think we're probably aware if the city were to move forward in a direction where we did this on our own, I'm curious, ballpark figure, how much that would cost to begin with. Do we have any general idea what that figure would be?
We don't, and the value of doing this is we'll better understand that.
Okay. And there are other cities here in North County and in San Diego County that, have venues. Are there any cities that have successfully been able to program their own venue and really attract the type of return necessary for us to say, hey, you know what, this public money, it would be a great investment for the city to be able to do it on its own and kind of have a little bit more control?
I'll take that one. There are very few public agencies that self-perform. The Moonlight is actually very rare. There's, I think, just a couple in Southern California alone. And Mr. Ham alluded to it in his presentation, and that is when we were self-performing the AVO during the winter shows, we were losing money. And we walked away from that a number of years ago as a result. But even just leasing it out, it's still not cash. It's not in the black when you take into account overhead, the facility costs, and everything else. So it's very difficult from a city perspective with no expertise in the marketing of acts and being in that entertainment world to be able to be profitable on our own. If we were to do it, we would need marketing and sales and a director, and I think we'd be a little out of our league operating a venue like that. Similar to something like the Belly Up is what we would compare it to.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on some of the comments that Councilmember Green made. Definitely, I don't want to see the historic beauty of the AVO go away in any way, because it is just so striking, and that's what makes it such a unique asset. But I definitely think that it's about time that we explore doing something meaningful with the AVO, and where we can have a lot of people in the community benefit. So I'm very supportive of moving forward.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a big step for us to do this, to enter into a feasibility study, if you will. The AVO Playhouse is historic to our community. It's a landmark to our community. It is one of the brightest threads in the fabric that make up Vista and who we are as Vistans. And that is not lost on me, and I'm sure it's not lost on my colleagues either. We are not looking to do anything that will take away from that, but to help make that star shine again for our community. Make sure that it is something really spectacular to continue with the progress that we're making, not just downtown, but throughout our city. I'm very excited about this. And I think this is going into discussions. This is going into investigating whether or not this can be done. And if so, how will it be done? And how will it benefit and lift up our community? And anybody who's been following along with me for the last couple of years, you know that's what I'm about. How is this going to benefit my community? How is this going to lift us up? How is this going to enhance who we are as Vistans? And I think we will not lose the voice of our community. I think that there will come a time where that will happen. But right now, we're just going to start the discussion to see what, if anything, can be done here. So I really don't want people to think that we're so disconnected that we're not Vistans. We are Vistans. We are all Vistans, and this is important to all of us, and that it be done right. So I'm excited about this. Very much so. I look forward to this. And just to echo what my colleagues all said, I think this is going to be, if we can do this, I think it will be a huge benefit to our community. I do share the concerns that I've heard from constituents. I did see the threads on social media that were talking about it. This is a huge venue for our community and for our youth. And these are things that we'll have to talk about when we get to that. I think right now it's a little bit premature. I do know that Mr. Wentz and his colleagues are aware of some of the concerns and some of the questions. Those aren't things we haven't talked about that aren't out there. They are. So I'm asking for the community to trust where we are in this process at the very beginning of it, and that our voices will be heard and our community will benefit from this. And if we see in this discussion that that's not the way it's going to be, then this won't happen, because I'm sure that we are all committed to that. So with that, I agree. I will third the motion. You can third
Motion
the
and a
motion.
second, yeah.
We have a motion, second, and a third. So thank you very much. And Mr. Wentz, thank you.
And I agree with all my council members, and they all have said it very well, so I won't repeat it all, three of you. So we'll just cast our votes, please. That motion passes unanimously. And that moves us on to our first public hearing. There's one public hearing this evening. Public hearing is to receive testimony regarding proposed citywide development code amendments. Public hearing is now open. Our Community Development and Engineering Director, John Conley, will introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mike Ressler, our Principal Planner, will be providing the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The item before you tonight is a development code update. Application numbers P19-0331. In an effort to streamline multiple small amendments to the development code, staff has assembled all the items in one report. The City Council may direct staff to remove any item that they have a concern of, and we can discuss that individually. This item was reviewed by the Planning Commission for formal recommendation on October 15th. The first amendment would be to Chapter 17.84, which is a lot line adjustment. Staff is proposing to eliminate a 15-day time frame requirement to approve, conditionally approve, or deny a lot line adjustment application. This language isn't state requirement, and typically this process takes a substantially longer time than 15 days. The second amendment would be to the definitions of an accessory building. Currently, that definition limits the size of an accessory building to less than 50% of the size of the main building on site. Staff is proposing to exempt properties located within the E1, A1, and OR zones, which are typically larger lots that can accommodate larger accessory buildings. Staff is also proposing to allow metal detached accessory buildings subject to the review and approval by the zoning administrator. Next amendment would be to the swimming pool definition. Staff is proposing to include location limitations for swimming pools, which are consistent with the accessory building location requirements. This is something that staff has historically been implementing in the past, and we're just memorializing in this amendment. Next, we're proposing an amendment to the A1 agricultural zone. Staff is proposing amending a list of permitted uses to clarify the production of trees, vines, and other horticultural stock shall be performed in ground. This amendment would be based upon some of the code enforcement complaints that we've received in terms of property owners having pots and other potted trees and so forth on the property. Becomes a property maintenance issue and so forth. Changes to the RM zone. Staff is proposing to eliminate the distance between dwelling requirement in this section and utilizing the side yard setback requirement, which requires a 15-foot building separation between attached units and a 10-foot separation between detached units. And this amendment basically clears up a discrepancy between two sections of the development code. Next is an amendment to the mixed-use zone. Staff is proposing to amend the list of permitted uses to include one adult dog or cat per dwelling unit as a use permitted by right. This would be consistent with the current pet allowance in the RM zone. Currently, there are no limitations in terms of pets within the mixed-use zone. In regards to the C1 zone, staff is proposing to amend a list of permitted uses upon granting a special use permit to replace auto laundry with car wash. This is just old language that was carried on from the original county development code, so it's just a cleanup item. Second would be staff is proposing to change the approval process for outdoor eating facility to a plot plan process in order to expedite the review process. There are 4 proposed amendments to the off-street parking and loading requirements. Staff is proposing to include automobile service stations within the number of parking spaces required section. Including the parking requirements for automobile service stations in this chapter would be appropriate and user-friendly. Second, staff is proposing to change the striping standards from 2 5-inch wide stripes separated by 8 inches to 2 4-inch wide stripes separated by 10 inches. And this is consistent with what's currently taking place in the field today. Last, staff is proposing to prescribe a 16.5-foot long parking envelope with the 2.5 foot vehicular overhang, which is consistent with other code-related requirements. There are 5 amendments to the general provisions, conditions, and exemption chapter. First, staff is proposing to exempt properties located within the mixed use and the downtown Vista specific plan zone for the special setback requirements in 1858-020 and allow special setback modifications as a condition of approval. This amendment would encourage development closer to the public street as envisioned within each zoning area. Second, staff is proposing to include swimming pool in location of accessory building section and require that 2-story accessory buildings comply with the standard setbacks within those zones. This 2-story setback requirement would prevent the intrusion of higher profile buildings on adjacent properties. Third, staff is proposing a minimum separation of 3 feet between fences or walls anywhere on a development site. This would ensure adequate separation between walls and prevent intense wall heights when combining multiple walls. Staff is proposing to allow minimum floor area be modified as a condition of approval through the site development plan or plot plan process. This amendment would encourage flexibility in terms of enhanced design, and especially in the higher density zoned areas. Last, staff is proposing to remove the existing trash enclosure standard and require the size of the collection area to be designed to accommodate the containers consistent with the current methods of the franchise refuge contractor. In regards to Chapter 1864, Site Development Plan and Plot Plans, staff is proposing to require all facade modifications to existing multi-tenant commercial and industrial development be subject to a plot plan review process. This amendment would provide staff with a tool to achieve quality architectural design for multi-tenant commercial and industrial remodels. In regards to temporary use permits, staff is proposing to clarify that temporary use permits can be issued for properties designated for commercial and industrial use within specific plan areas, which currently do not allow for any outdoor temporary uses. And finally, staff is proposing to allow the city planner the authority to approve or deny temporary use permits for temporary promotional activities that aren't listed within this section, and temporary use permits for activities that exceed the duration of 5 days. This would expedite the review process for certain temporary and promotional activities. With that, staff is recommending the City Council approval of amendments to Title 17 and 18 of the Development Code related to subdivision and zoning regulations. And that concludes staff's report.
Okay, so I have Councilmember Green.
We don't have any speakers on this one that want to talk about all the 18.858. Okay, cool. I'll go first. Hey, Michael. Hi. Great job. That's a lot, mouthful of words. Awesome. So what I tried to do is just kind of the ones that I wanted to slow down and take another look at. I had questions on. So the first one is 18.34080, has to do with the distance between dwellings, RM, and multi-residential zoning. My question for you is, right now it looks like we have a side yards require 15-foot separation between attached units and a 10-foot separation between detached units. So are we saying that with our new code amendments, we don't have to have the 10-foot separation between detached units now? Or is that a change that we're eliminating that setback?
Actually, there's two sections that apply to this. One would be the separation between buildings. That's one section that requires a minimum 10-foot separation.
Okay.
And then we have a side yard setback that requires
So you need
a
15 feet
setback
for your side
between
yards.
buildings,
Okay.
which would be 15 and 10. So in order to alleviate the discrepancy between the two sections, we would just rely on the side yard setback, which would be 15 for attached units and 10 for detached units.
Okay, so we're not necessarily changing any setback requirements per se.
No, we're fixing a discrepancy that's in the code now.
Okay, cool. So like if somebody's building something, they don't have to freak out and be like, oh goodness, the setback's changing. Okay, and then the other one that I wrote down was the one right next to it in regards to, let's see, amending a list of special uses. Not the auto laundry. Auto laundry I thought was awesome, by the way. Councilmember Franklin and I like auto laundry, but it is what it is. So that was that. The other one was 18.58590. What did I write down on that one here? 18.585. Refuse and collection storage. So I know that we want for those of you who don't know, your trash cans are supposed to be taken in and put someplace where you don't see them. And if you don't take them behind your area, you're supposed to build a storage facility for them. So this is just saying, hey, our old requirements were a different size. Now we want to make sure that your big rolly trash cans won't be exposed to the public. Is that correct?
Correct.
Just cleaning that up. Okay, cool. The other one was the metal building sheds, okay? Every time somebody goes and buys a tough shed from Home Depot, do they have to come to the city and make sure we're good to go with that tough shed? I mean, other than a homeowners association that has jurisdiction over exterior buildings.
So if it's over a certain size, if it's over 120 square feet, it requires a building permit. And
Okay.
We have to review it and make sure it meets setbacks.
So those are the
etc.
metal buildings we're talking about. We're not talking about your standard.
120 square feet is our limit, so most of the
Gotcha.
smaller metal structures are smaller than that.
Gotcha. All right. Auto laundry, metal sheds. No, with that said, I think we did good with exception to the last one, 18.76-010, the temporary use permits. I'm assuming we're doing that for our businesses that are in our industrial park so that they have...
We don't currently identify the specific plan areas. We just say commercial and industrial zones, so we're just clarifying that it includes those specific plans.
So blankets, it covers all of those that aren't getting the opportunity to experience that necessarily temporary use permit. Okay. Thank you so much for the clarification. Great job. Great presentation.
Deputy Mayor Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. Anything that streamlines and expedites and explains the process is a good thing. So thank you for doing this. Some of these really needed to be cleaned up and clarified and make it easier for the people for the constituents who are looking for these rules. What are they? And so I really appreciate that because we've had a lot of questions on these over the years. And then, like I said, eliminating, giving exemptions or streamlining the process, that is always a good thing. And we will always look for more ways to do that. So maybe we'll have another conversation next year on what else can we streamline, what else can we make easier for the people, because, making it easier instead of harder is what it's all about. So thank you for this. And with that, if we need one motion to approve the lot of it, I would go ahead and make that motion.
Close the public hearing.
And I move to close the public hearing and approve the recommendations as presented to us.
Councilmember Franklin.
Going back to the setbacks, so after we make this change, the prevailing will be a 30-foot distance between multifamily or rather attached homes, and that's a total of 15 foot. So I don't understand the side yard.
So there's distance between buildings of 10 feet, but then when you get to the property line, you have a 15-foot side yard setback. So you'd have 15 feet, and then if there were multiple buildings, they'd be 10 feet apart within the site. We're clarifying that standard.
So for a new apartment home development that's multi-unit, does that mean 25 feet between the buildings?
No, that just means 15 feet from the property line for the building, and then that building could be 10 feet from another building on site that's within the site.
So generally, 10 foot is the prevailing number between most buildings?
Correct.
Including single family?
Except for the property line limits, that's correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Do you want to second the motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, I have no more speakers, and so I would ask you to cast your votes. That motion passes unanimously. That brings us to our discussion items. There's one discussion item this evening. It's 2019 housing legislation update, and Director John Conley is going to provide the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to be covering some of the legislative changes that our state legislature made in last year's session related to housing. Several bills were signed by the governor that became effective in January of this year related to accessory dwelling units, what's called the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, which affects our local control and how we review housing developments. What's called the Housing Omnibus Bill, which is primarily a funding bill. There's changes to the density bonus law, and then I'm going to give you an update on where we are with our housing element. So I'll jump right into it unless anyone has any questions to start. The first changes that were the most significant that were made by the legislature in this last session were related to accessory dwelling units. There were 4 major bills that are listed up there that identify what changes occurred and what we're subject to starting January 1. We have not amended our second unit ordinance at this time, just primarily due to staff limitations. So the state law takes effect January 1, which I'll cover, but we will be coming back with an amended ordinance that implements Vista's requirements consistent with state law. But first, with regard to accessory dwelling units, there are several areas or criteria that were changed. The first being location. The city can no longer require a minimum lot size for an accessory dwelling unit. They have to be permitted in any single-family zone, regardless of lot size. They also can now be permitted in multifamily and mixed-use zones. So we'll have to update our code to allow for them in those zones as well. There are also no setbacks for existing structures, and side and rear yard setbacks are reduced to 4 feet. Our current code requires 5 feet, so there's a reduced setback for those types of structures, particularly ADUs. The size limitations are also changed. You can no longer have a minimum size that's less than 220 square feet. Greater than 220 square feet. So you couldn't put a minimum size that was greater than 220. You have to allow that small of a size. The maximum size can't be less than 800, so you have to go up to 800. Our current code allows up to 1,200, so we're not going to change, but the state law has changed. Attached accessory dwelling units are no longer limited to 1,200 square feet. Rather, they're half the size of the main unit. So if the main unit is greater than 2,400 square feet, the accessory unit can be greater than 1,200. With respect to parking, we can no longer require replacement parking for garage conversions. In the past code, we were allowed to replace the 2 spaces that were lost when a garage was converted. We can no longer do so. We also cannot require parking for an accessory dwelling unit that's within a half mile of any transit stop, which is defined as a bus stop in state law. The review timeframes have changed. We have to provide ministerial approval within 60 days. This includes any junior accessory dwelling unit. A junior accessory dwelling unit is defined as a unit that's no greater than 500 square feet that's enclosed entirely within the existing home. We have to allow at least one of those and one detached or attached separate ADU, so you have to allow up to 3 units now on a single-family residential lot. We cannot apply any standards with the exception of square footage, building height, and setbacks, so no design standards are permissible, and we cannot require the correction of other zoning violations as a condition of development for an ADU. We have to allow it regardless of what other zoning violations occur unless it directly affects the location of the ADU itself. With respect to the number of ADUs, as I mentioned, we have to allow at least one ADU and one junior ADU on any single-family lot. We have to allow multiple ADUs on any lot zoned for multifamily or mixed use, not to exceed 25% of the number of the existing units. And we must allow at least 2 detached ADUs on any multifamily zoned lot as long as they meet setback and development standard requirements. With respect to development impact fees, we can no longer levy development impact fees for ADUs that are less to or equal to or less than 750 square feet in size. Development impact fees may be charged for ADUs that are greater than 750 square feet in size, but they have to be proportional to the size of the main unit. So we estimate a percentage of the main unit compared to the ADU size, and that's the amount of development impact fees we can charge. Connection and capacity fees for utilities for sewer and water can no longer be charged for ADUs unless they are constructed along with a new single-family home. Short-term rentals are not permitted under the state law. ADUs can't be rented for a period less than 30 days. The local ordinance, as I mentioned, was nullified by this legislation because we have not adopted a new ordinance prior to January 1, but we will be bringing a new ordinance forward. Until then, we're subject to state law. That Department of Housing and Community Development oversees the ADU ordinance adoption, and they have to review it and approve it. And if they don't, then violations that you don't respond to can be referred to the Attorney General, so more teeth in terms of the enforcement. And the housing element must specifically address accessory dwelling units in our update, which we'll be bringing forward next year, and we have to report and track numbers, although we can count them as affordable units, so the city does get some benefit there. With respect to homeowners associations, I believe it's AB 670, identifies that HOAs can no longer restrict the development of ADUs. They can place reasonable restrictions on ADUs, but they can't prohibit or unreasonably increase the cost of development. Within that legislation, reasonable restrictions are not defined, so those restrictions could differ from what the city imposes, but the short story is homeowners associations in the past could restrict ADUs based on their CC&Rs. They can no longer do so. They have to allow them in some form. The city doesn't determine what that is. The association does. And finally, the state law allows for separate sale.
May I clarify one thing, though?
Sure.
The city retains, under that new state law, the city retains the power to zone. And so our ordinance doesn't allow within the specific zones, the specific plans, rather. So that ordinance remains in effect, correct?
No.
Really?
The new law requires that we allow them in any single-family zone, regardless of zoning, specific plans, or other restrictions. So if it's zoned for single-family use, we have to allow them to construct an ADU.
So in all of Shadow Ridge now, everybody can build an ADU in their backyard?
Under state law, they can build an ADU consistent with what the homeowners association will allow them to do, but the homeowners association cannot restrict them from building an ADU. The association may determine that they don't want to allow detached ADUs, but they can allow garage conversions, or they can allow them inside the home, but they'll have to allow them in some form.
Oh, okay.
That completes the ADU summary. Next, we'll move on to the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. This is legislation that sunsets in 2025, so it's a 5-year window. They've applied new requirements to a housing development, which includes any residential project or any mixed-use project with 2/3 housing, and allows only objective standards in review that can't be subjective, like design. They have to be numerical and objective. So we'll have to come back with some adopted standards. It also establishes a new preliminary application process that freezes development standards at the time of submittal for any housing development. So a housing developer can submit this preliminary application, and all of the requirements that are in place at the time that the city receives the preliminary application are frozen so that they can't change throughout the process that the application is processed. It also amends a Permit Streamlining Act to expedite housing by limiting any hearings, which are determined to be any community meetings, public hearings, or other meetings that the developer is compelled to attend, to a maximum of 5. No rezoning may be required if a project is consistent with the general plan. So if the general plan designation is in place and allows housing at a certain density, but the zoning is not consistent, they do not need to rezone to develop the site with the housing at that density. The Housing Crisis Act also establishes a freeze on current residential land use designations effective January 1, 2018. So any changes to land use density with respect to residential development that have occurred since January 1, 2018 are null and void. We did adopt one amendment to the Downtown Vista specific plan, which is voided by this action. I'll cover that. It restricts local agencies from redesignating residential land to non-residential use or decreasing current residential density, so our residential development capacity is essentially frozen in place. It also requires replacement of any residential units demolished with the project to be replaced within the new development project. And finally, restricts any moratoriums on residential development or growth control measures that would reduce or restrict residential uses within your city. Again, it sunsets in 2025, but we're stuck with it for 5 years. There were 5 areas within the Downtown Vista specific plan that were downzoned in September of 2018, and they will all revert back to the original density of 40 units to the acre. They're shown here in the red. Not a huge footprint, but they will revert back to what they were prior. There was an Omnibus Bill, AB 101, which essentially applies stricter enforcement of the housing element. There was a number of grant fund opportunities created by this bill, about $1.3 billion, which targets homeless assistance, local planning, and infrastructure programs for infill development, and we'll be seeing some opportunities for that money in competitive grants. And it also expands eligibility for housing programs that are in place now, such as Cal Home, housing trust grants, tax credits for affordable housing, and special needs housing. So hopefully our housing folks can take advantage of some of those funds. There were changes to the density bonus law, primarily to address 100% affordable projects, projects that are at least 80% very low or low income and at least 20% moderate may receive density bonus up to 80% of the current allowed density. If such projects are within a half mile of a major transit stop, there is no maximum density. It also increases the number of allowable development concessions, which are basically waivers from development standards, from 3 to 4. And finally, it eliminates all parking requirements for any project that's 100% affordable if it's within a half mile of a transit stop, and allows an automatic height allowance of up to 3 stories or 33% above the permissible height. I want the council to understand, though, that 100% affordable projects are typically subsidized by the housing division of the city, and in those situations where we have other contractual obligations with the developer, we do have some control over how the project looks and is developed. So for the most part, I don't expect that these will have a major impact on us, but if a developer wants to build a 100% affordable project and requires no subsidy from the city, the gates are opened. Last, I wanted to give you an update on our housing element. The Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is also known as the RHNA, was recently approved by the SANDAG board. It's considered the 6th cycle, and our number in that cycle is 2,561 units. So the breakdown is shown on the screen here. Each category has a number assigned in very low, low, moderate, and above moderate, and then the total number is provided to the city. This number was established based on a look at transit and jobs, so the housing units were assigned to cities that had a greater propensity for transit and a greater number of jobs because they're trying to put housing near those two uses. There are 4 cities that have appealed SANDAG's assignment of the RHNA. It will go to the board, I believe, next month for a decision, but I'm not expecting any changes to the numbers at the staff level. The cities that are voting would likely receive more units if they voted in favor of the appeal, so it's highly unlikely that the appeals will be considered or approved. The current RHNA that we have is shown on the right there. You can see it's a significant increase. It's about an 86%, I believe, increase what was listed in the paper this morning. So preparation of the next housing element will begin early this year and has to be completed by April of next year. The housing element has to include a sites inventory that identifies the properties where the 2,561 housing units can be accommodated within the city. It requires that the city accommodate these units at various income levels through its zoning and development standards, but does not require that we actually produce the units. We just have to accommodate that number within our zoning categories. There were 2 bills that were approved in the last 2 cycles that will affect this that I wanted to just briefly cover. AB 1397 addresses housing sites. And so sites that were included in our last housing element or the cycle before that have to be reevaluated to be used again, so we can't just keep recycling the same sites over and over. Vacant sites that have been used in the past 2 cycles or developed sites which are considered underutilized that have been used in the past cycle cannot be used again unless they are rezoned to allow housing by right with a minimum of 20% affordable units. So if we want to use a site that we've used in the past 2 cycles that's a vacant site, we'd have to zone it for housing by right. In other words, they'd be able to develop housing without a discretionary approval as long as they included a 20% affordable component. That could come into play, and we'll be bringing that back to discuss it further. There's also SB 166, which was approved in the last session, which calls for no net loss. These went into effect in 2018, and they require that an inventory identify the level of affordability for each site. So in the past cycle, we just had to identify a total number of sites and say, with the zoning in place at those locations, we can accommodate this whole number of 1,374 units. In this cycle, we'll have to assign the type of housing that will go on each site, so it will be very low, low, or moderate. And when a market rate development occurs on that site, we'll have to move those units to another location and either have above what we need within our site's inventory in terms of the number of properties, or rezone, and we'll have 180 days, 6 months to rezone and reassign those sites to another location. So it's essentially pushing the dominoes around every time we have a market rate development if it's assigned for an affordable housing site. So we have some significant hurdles to get over in our next update, but we'll be bringing it back to the council to discuss. So in summary, staff will be preparing amendments to the development code and general plan. We'll bring back the ADU ordinance. That's the first on the agenda. We've developed a preliminary application for housing projects, which is going to go online here in the next month. We have to bring back objective standards, which we will be doing along with our housing element update, and we'll be updating the density bonus ordinance. So all of those will be coming forward to you for either discussion or action within the next year. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
It's a good thing this isn't a vote, because none of us would like it to vote. Okay, so Councilmember Franklin.
Well, it's a lot of very disappointing changes coming out of Sacramento intended to eliminate local control and, frankly, the ability of the residents of Vista to come here before the council and be heard and to be considered what's in their preference. Our community is losing, because of the actions of our state policymakers, the ability for self-determination. Neighborhoods, folks who purchased homes in a homeowners association because they valued the standards for that HOA are losing those standards. They're being eviscerated by our state legislature. And, I lived on a 9th floor apartment in a high-rise in a downtown urban area. I've lived a significant period of my life in urban downtown areas that were very high density. I enjoyed it when I was a young person. And then I got to a place in my life where I wanted to live in a suburban neighborhood. In America, we like to think we have the ability to choose, but what's happening, and we have a measure that's on the ballot that's going to restrict development in areas where we could be building new housing and force basically more densification of what are already suburban and urban areas. We really need, as a state, to speak up to our state policymakers, our state assembly member and our state senator, and tell them that we reject the lack of local control. Citizens have a vote at their city council. If they don't like the direction their city council is taking their city on zoning or density, then they can eliminate that city council, elect one that will densify. We don't need the assembly to shove down the throats of the people of Vista and of all the other communities in this state these densification policies that take local control away. We should have the ability to self-determine for our community what our community is going to look like. So I'm very disappointed. I appreciate the update, by the way. I'm not disappointed with our staff. You guys are doing a great job, but I appreciate you bringing us this update. But I want folks to know, because I know in the years to come, citizens are going to come before us in this chamber, and they are going to be unhappy about the consequences of these new policies, and we're going to have to look at them, and they're going to find it very empty when we tell them that it's the state law that we have to comply with. It's not going to make them happy, and they're going to wonder why we are without the authority to get anything done, and why they need us at all. In fact, as these authorities and powers are taken away from the community, why even have a city council? What's the purpose if the state is going to reach in and have central authority and central command structure from Sacramento? We need to be asking these questions as citizens, and we need to be voting these people out who are preferring to make policy at the statewide level rather than allowing the citizens. Because I guarantee you, I have people call me every week at least, and I don't care if it's somebody's parking where they shouldn't be parking or they want something changed. I'm going to spend as much time talking with them as they want to spend talking to me, and I'm going to get something done for them if I can. But when you call your state assemblyman, I represent 25,000 people. Your state assemblyman represents 350,000 people. They don't have the same quantity of time, nor do they have the same level of interest or concern when you're not happy. You have the ability to fire me if you get your neighbors upset about it. But you really don't have as great of an ability to affect change in your state assembly person or your state senator who represents 1 million people. Government works best when it's closest to the people. We need to preserve that, whether you're on whatever end of the spectrum you're on. Folks should prefer local control. So I just think it's important to have that conversation for the people to understand where we're headed in this state.
Agreed. Councilmember Green.
I actually agree with all of that. And from a local control standpoint, I definitely think that's something we need to fight for on our end. And it's got to be frustrating for our staff as well, constantly working within different codes and then having somebody who they don't even know send them a whole new list of things you got to do. So real sorry about that. One thing that I wanted to ask a question about had to do with the ADUs, and something you said that I think kind of goes in conjunction with that might be kind of a saving grace, because I have properties that are in HOAs in my district as well, is that every HOA does have an architectural committee, number one. So their architectural committee will still have some type of governing authority over the appearance of these ADUs. The state's not taking away the HOA's architectural committee ability to design. They're saying you have to have them, but you can kind of dictate what the design looks like as far as the uniformity to the community. We got peach stucco, we got, tile roofs. I mean, they still have to adhere to the community. So that's number one part of the question. Number two part of the question is whether they're in an HOA or not, they still have to abide by our setback requirements. So if they're in some of these developments like the Calypso Heritage Development in Shadow Ridge that is already on a 0 lot line and you have no yard, there's no room, they're not going to be forced to allow you to put an ADU on the top of your house, right? Like, it's not possible due to the setback requirements and our height requirements within the city, correct?
Not yet.
That's correct.
I'm sorry? Not yet. But that's yet. Right now, we still have those assurities per se, right?
Yes, the HOAs can still review architectural requirements and put specific standards in for design. The state only says you have to allow it. It doesn't say how you regulate it. All it's saying to the HOAs is you can't prohibit it anymore and you can't make it so expensive that someone can't do it. So figure it out. That's pretty much the state.
Okay, but once again, from a setback requirement standpoint, we're not like our setbacks are still in place. They can't place impractical requirements for building. Like if I live in a community that doesn't have a 0 lot line, which I do on Foothill Drive, my neighbor next to me can't build an ADU that comes right up to my lot line because I have a 10-foot setback requirement.
4 feet.
Wow, so they changed that from 10 to 4.
4 feet is what the new law says. You have to allow.
So they could literally steal my avocados, just reach right over.
Side and rear yard setbacks are limited to 4 feet. The front
I give my avocados; they don't have to steal them. Okay, so there's some assurances, but they're all being slowly taken away, is what it sounds like.
Yes.
And pretty soon, they can make us put another one on top of our house. Wow. Okay, thanks for the reality check. I appreciate it. I think that's all I needed.
Deputy Mayor Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Conley, for this report. As Councilman Franklin said, it's very disappointing that Sacramento feels that they want to come in and take control. Whether we like what they're doing, and some people like it. Some people want ADUs everywhere. Some people don't. I hear from both sides. I hear more from the people who want the restrictions than I do from the people who want to do anything, anywhere, all the time. But no matter how you feel about any of the issues that we have in our city, it's our city. We aren't Sacramento, we aren't Los Angeles, we aren't San Francisco, and we should be allowed to be our city, and we should be allowed to hear our voices and to have a say in what we're doing in our city and how our city grows. And Sacramento taking that away from us in one fell swoop, well, they've been doing this for a long time, but to effectively just come in and take away a city's voice and a city's control over their own destiny is very disheartening and unbelievable. And it just makes me madder than a hornet that they would do that. So, like I said, it doesn't matter. This is one item. You might agree with everything on this list, and that's fine. But the fact that the state is saying you have to do this, whether you like it or not, what's the next item on their agenda that they're going to come in and take away our local control, take away our voices, take away our own destiny? Because I can assure you this is just one. They have a whole list of areas that they're trying to do this on. And the other thing I'm just going to put out there is that I was in a meeting in Sacramento last year when a legislator was talking about some of these bills. And also somebody here in San Diego County, not Vista, but in the county, had made the comment that if every homeowner in the entire county built an ADU in your own backyard, we could eliminate the homeless problem. And that this is kind of the impetus of where some of this is coming from. I don't agree with that assessment. I think there are more issues and more dimensions to the homeless situation that we have rather than just needing a place to lay their head at night that's sheltered. There are other issues in that discussion to have besides asking everybody to build another house in your backyard. So I think the state is terribly misguided on this, and I'm sad that we have no recourse.
Councilmember Franklin, and I apologize, I accidentally erased your name.
I don't know if it was an accident, but that's all right. I probably deserved it. I just had to touch on, I'm just kidding.
So that's why we were laughing, because I erased his name. And
that's her way of saying I've talked my fill already tonight. Deputy Mayor Rigby touched on what I wanted to say to leave you with a thought, which is, what if the density of your neighborhood was doubled? What if every one of your neighbors had another person dwelling in the new building they've built in the backyard, and there's no more parking required for it, and buildings are closer to your house than ever, and the total character and feel of the neighborhood that you have purchased, the most significant asset you will own in your lifetime, your home, the character and feel of that asset and your ability to enjoy it has been fundamentally changed. This is not a left or a right issue. This is a fundamental, change for people's precious space that they invest their entire lives to try and own something that's meaningful to them. So I just had to leave you with that thought.
I was wondering, like in Shadridge, like the HOA, like you have to be able to park in your garages. I was wondering I wonder what they'll do. Can they then do the close their garage in now and then have them park in the driveways? Is that going to be legal?
So Shadow Ridge HOA is going to have to figure out what they're going to do, but they can't restrict ADUs, so they'll have to come up with a plan. But yeah, that could be an issue.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, if every one of my neighbors turns their garage into an apartment,
You're moving.
Well, I'm going to have to find another state, that's for sure, because, I won't be the only one. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. We got to wake up. This is total idiocy. And I'll tell you, the folks downtown, the folks in Encinitas, they're not going to like it either, quite frankly.
Right. Oh, One more. Deputy Mayor.
And you reminded me of a good point, and it's may or may not be germane to the discussion, and you brought up the RENA numbers, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and the cities that are appealing their RENA numbers. And it's just an interesting, fun fact to know that at the board meeting, when we were having the discussion of RENA numbers and the allocation for all of the jurisdictions and what their numbers were going to be, some of the cities had said they wanted to increase that number. They wanted San Diego County to take more than Sacramento had allocated. So they voted to take more numbers. But for their individual cities, they voted, no, we want you all to take the numbers, and we're voting for your numbers to go up, but we don't want any more in our city. And some of those cities are the ones who are appealing their RENA numbers. That's what is happening. Just so you know. It's all over the place.
I agree with that. It was crazy. And a lot of us voted for the lower numbers, and they called for a weighted vote and gave the higher numbers. And they voted for the higher numbers, and now they don't want the numbers.
And now they don't want the numbers that they voted for.
Yeah, so anyway, put that to bed, and we don't need to vote on this. This is information only, not information we like, but we have to hear. So do we have any oral communications? So next we're moving on to our oral communications here. So we have Mark Stinnett, and then followed by Matt. Is Mark here?
Good evening.
That's good.
My name's Mark Stinnett, and I'm a 30-year Vista resident. This is my wife, Christina. I've been doing public works projects for most of my career in construction, over 30 years. So I'm very familiar with public works contracting, city standards, green book, and city specifications. I'd like to address the road repairs that are being done on Vista Way after the storm drain replacement project that's been ongoing for about a year. I encourage any of you to drive from here over to the hospital and back on Vista Way and pay attention to the road itself and the repairs. So what our city standards say is that if you do
right into the mic. Yeah, there you go.
If you do a trench in the city of Vista, and most of the road repairs for the storm drain are a type A trench, then it has to be repaired within these specifications. And I've highlighted some relevant sections, and the relevant sections state that the repair must be in conformance with the 2012 Green Book standards. This is the Green Book, which I'm very familiar with. And I gave you the section of the Green Book that applies to this repair. And what it states is that in a distance of 10 feet, here to there could be no imperfection greater than 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch is so whether the road's level or uphill or downhill, in that 10 feet of section, there can be no bumps or imperfections greater than that thickness. I'm going to tell you right now, we're not even close to that on those repairs. If you drive across Vista Village or Vista Way, you're going to hit some big bumps. And I'd like to have you encourage our city staff to just be a little tighter on the contractors and make sure that the repairs are done within our own city standards, if possible. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I can provide an update, those repairs, the significant sewer work that's being done on Vista Village to West Vista Way, out in front of the Ford dealership from a perspective of where it's at, those are temporary. As they're continuing to dig up the road and go trench, they will pave that section of roadway in a final form to our standards when the project is done at completion. But right now, they're continuing to go into the road and utilize it and dig up and repave. So those are just temporary patchwork that's being complete.
So what you're stating is that would be a temporary repair?
Yeah, what you're seeing now is a temporary repair.
And according to our own standards, no temporary repair will be in place for more than 10 working days. So it's not it's been over a year that this project's been ongoing.
We'll have Public Works take a look at that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
We'll have them look at it. Matt?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would also like to not drive in bumps. Yeah, the state really went to town on the ADUs. That was surprising. Yeah, good news, Councilmember Franklin. You're going to get some new voters. Yeah, I mean, they probably did overreach here, but, you know, California, we're going to be growing in population every year for the foreseeable future. Thank you to whoever fixed the light, like way up there that I mentioned a long time ago. Trying to imagine the size of the sort of the pole that was used to do that, and imagine that took some skill, so thank you to that person. Speaking of roofs, I was at the library, and one of the librarians was remarkably helpful, so I'm glad to see that the library will be getting a new roof in the upcoming year. I also went to a meeting with Sandag, and kind of a note there was they weren't really, there's like an announcement in March, but they're not really planning any big ballot initiative till 2024. So I guess we're going to be dealing with traffic for a little while longer. Traffic here in Vista at rush hour is pretty bad. Just a reminder about that. I drove on South Santa Fe. That construction is coming along decently. I don't think it's going to be done by March, but that was predictable. Maybe that's, you know, tying into the downturn in downtown. Certainly, traffic is just an issue everywhere in Vista, and I'd like to see some projects to that effect. John Connolly, he did a community outreach meeting on the Vista Climate Action Plan update. Surprising there was the number of students, high school and college, that attended. They were grilling him on, you know, what about this? What about that? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Of interest there to me was, you know, John's a humble staff member. So at some point, these students are going to realize that there's 5 other people that are really in charge of what's happening with the Vista Climate Action Plan. So I would expect them to visit you at some point in the upcoming year and talk first and foremost about community choice energy.
That's the end of our speakers. So with that,
Mayor, if I might, just to let the council know that Paseo Santa Fe, the project that's being done, Phase 2 is expected to be completed in March. However, the Phase 3 section of the project won't be done until late November.
we'll call it Christmas. Okay. Just to be safe. Okay, with that, I will go on. I'll do my comments, and then I'll go to you guys, your comments. So we have here the new Civic Gallery art exhibit outside the council chambers, and they had food there tonight. Actually, I see cookies up and down the council and pretzels from there. So, yes, outside the council, it features the works of artists Krista Timberlake and Rich Tanko, and is on display through February 12th out there. Residents are encouraged to apply for a volunteer position on a city commission, board, or committee. The applications are due February 10th, and they're available online at cityofvista.com or by contacting the city clerk's office at 760-639-6125. So it's 639-6125. And the county's holding a public feedback forum on shaping our aging community at the McClellan Senior Center tomorrow, January 15th at 8:30 a.m. Older adults, caregivers, and people with disabilities are encouraged to attend. And that's all of my comments. I will go on to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to wish everybody a Happy New Year. I hope it's going well for you so far. And I want to say thank you to everybody who came out tonight, who came to hear what's happening, to participate, to let us hear your voices. It's so important that we have you here in the seats, and we really do appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. And staff, as always, you are very much appreciated as well.
Councilmember Franklin.
Thank you. I too want to thank everybody that came to speak. And the last thought of the night I want to leave you with is you have, under state law, the right to come and to speak before your city council and to be heard. You have no such right to go and to speak before the state assembly. You don't get 3 minutes to tell them what's on your mind. So for anybody who thinks what a great idea it is for Sacramento to take away and eviscerate the powers of your local community government, just remember, you'll have no right to go in to be heard before the State Assembly.
Thank you. Councilmember Green.
All right. Once again, thanks everybody for coming, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, all that stuff that we missed. First of all, the art reception that was out there earlier, I am guilty of pretzels. These are possibly the best pretzels I've ever had in my entire life, so thank you to Richard's wife for making those pretzels. Yoko is amazing. 2 announcements. Only Losers Litter Trash Walk, Sunday, January 19th, 2:30 at Fraser Farms. So if you want to meet there at 2:30 and come pick up trash, throw your headphones in, rock out, maybe find some future performers for our venue downstairs, downtown in the future. Also, Tuesday the 21st, this is something that's super cool. We're having our Safe Routes to School corridor study for Rancho Minerva Middle School. And I had a daughter who went to Rancho Minerva Middle School. I live off Foothill Drive. And those kids walking home have a tough walk home, not the safest route. And this is one of the first time the city is actually meeting with the school district in our city building here, right? It's going to be in the Morris Vance room. Okay, so in the Morris Vance room at 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 21st, anybody who lives in District 2 over here around Foothill, or anybody just kind of concerned with the safety of our kids walking home from Rancho Minerva, I encourage you to show up and be part of the discussion on what we can do to ensure we have safe routes to school. And the last thing that I am going to leave you with tonight is it is Tuesday, which is my favorite day of the week because it's Taco Tuesday. So we're going to be out of here before 7:30. Taco Tuesday, 508 Tavern. Come on down. They're amazing. Have a great night.
Councilmember Contreras.
Well, I hope everybody's having a fantastic 2020. Great discussions today, as usual. I guess I feel lucky that I get to meet with our state assembly person all the time. And I encourage everybody out there to, meet with their elected officials. Not everybody has the ability to go all the way up to Sacramento anyways, but you can catch them when they're here in our backyard and let them know what's going on. Last time I was there, 2 people came in with questions. Not surprisingly, one of them was about the DMV and the Real ID, so I'm going to have to deal with that pretty soon, and I'm not really excited. But again, thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and bring a friend. Don't hesitate. This is, we try to make it really fun up here, exciting. So in between now and the next council meeting, you're just going to have to just rest up and get ready for another exciting meeting coming up. So thank you so much. And for those of you out there who want to come pick up trash, we do that at Luz Duran Park every single Wednesday, and we are walking off starting at 9 a.m. So please come join. Thank you.
Interestingly, on your real license, I had to go back, because I got one, I had to go back and prove my name, that I got married in 1963, and I had my marriage certificate to prove that my name was Ritter, and it wasn't my name I was born. I had my birth certificate, and then you have to have your marriage license to prove your name was changed. And I was thinking, luckily I've been divorced for 20 years. Luckily I still had my marriage certificate from all those years ago. Okay, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to let everybody know, if you haven't driven by Civic Center northbound from the freeway, the new dedicated right turn lane at Postal was completed last month, and it's taken some of the pressure off of Civic Center, so we're very fortunate for that. And that on Monday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, city offices and the Vista Library will be closed. There will not be a delay with trash service, but city offices and county offices will be closed.
That's it?
That's it.
No. How about our city attorney, Daryl Piper?
Happy New Year to everybody.
How about our city clerk, Kathy? No? Claire? Nothing? Oh. Well, that we are adjourned at 7:16. I'll do this.